G'day everyone and welcome to this little edition of Be Mobile Live.
Yeah,
we are
live
answering
Q&A.
some questions today. It's Jack and Ollie, and yeah, as I say, we're answering some questions that were posted in response to your question this morning, Jack.
Yeah, actually a couple of days ago, I think that was. So just as a little introduction, Ollie and I are both physiotherapists up here at Be Mobile Physiotherapy. We're on the Northern Beaches, but we're also all around the world due to the internet, which is a great invention, isn't it?
It is a
pretty good invention.
But in all seriousness, it allows us to get some of our messages about exercise and getting moving over 55, which we are extremely passionate about. And we have a vast network of online members who are helping us to spread the word about exercise. So we are very grateful for the internet and to be live here today to help answer some questions.
And for anyone who is joining with us live, we appreciate you coming along. Now, just a little bit of a disclaimer about any of the questions that we are answering. We're not giving you specific advice, okay? This is just general recommendations based on our expertise as physios who work with adults 55 plus. But if you have any concerns, obviously go to your local doctor or health practitioner, whether it be a physio or an exercise physiologist, whatever it is, for more specific advice and an assessment, because we're not doing assessments here online, are we?
No, we are not just giving general advice. All right, well, let's get straight into some of these questions.
Mate.
We've got one here from Judy who says, what are the best exercises to do for increasing your bone density? Well, Jack, we have a great little video on that, which we will post in the comments, and that talks you through the sorts of exercises and how hard to push yourself with those exercises and the benefits for your bones from, spoiler, resistance training.
Yeah, so let's just give a general overview of what type of resistance training we're talking about. So we recommend doing free weights, so things where you're picking objects off of the ground, squatting with weight, pressing weight overhead. Now, the reason, Ollie, that our bones like this and then tend to adapt to it and grow stronger is because of the tendons that attach to the bones. When we use our muscles, that pulls on the bones and that creates stress, and then our body, when it recovers, actually adapts to the new loads and our bones become stronger. Same thing happens when we do impact training as well. The forces when we jump on the ground that go up through our bones, that creates stress, and we recover and we adapt so that our bones become stronger because, mate, we are not like scaffold equipment.
No, we are not. We are biological organisms, which means we can adapt. So when we're looking at resistance training, we're looking to really challenge ourselves with big movements, as Jack said, particularly targeting those areas which are problematic if you have low bone density, like the spine, like the hips. So we're talking squats, we're talking deadlifts. But head to that video and check out a little bit more in-depth instruction, and hopefully you can get on your path to improving your bone density, because we know from a lot of research that you can do it no matter your age, no matter your level of bone density.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Judy also asked how to get into a better routine for exercising. So we've actually got a great article that we can post. So we'll post that in the comments as well. That's kind of our most important tips for forming better exercise habits. Ollie, off the top of your head, what would you say is your number one, or at least one of your top 3 exercise tips? Well, sorry, habit tips.
For my number one tip would be to schedule in your session. So just like you would schedule in a doctor's appointment, that's a non-negotiable health appointment that you're making for yourself. You've got to do the same thing with exercise. So if you've got a resistance training session planned, you're going to write into your diary or your phone calendar, 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, I'm going to do 45 minutes. I'm going to get everything organized in advance. That's probably a separate tip. But you've got to schedule time into your week to get those done.
Great. My top tip, and actually I'll just say on the point you talked about scheduling, this is what we tell all of our online and in-studio clients at Be Mobile, is we tell them to schedule in their exercise. So we definitely tell our clients to, and we actually give them overview sheets where they can plan out in advance and tick off the workouts as they go. Now, my top tip, mate, I would have to say, I'd probably say do exercise that you enjoy, but do it with people around you, whether that's online in a community like we have with our online programs, or whether that's joining a local gym, or joining a local walk club, or just getting a friend who can go for daily exercise, whatever it is. I think when you have other people around you doing with the same goals of improving health, you're much more likely to get it done because they're going to cheer you on, be your cheerleaders.
And you're accountable to someone else as well, aren't you? Okay, great questions there from Judy. We've got another one here from Maria. Jack, do you want to read that one out?
Yeah, beautiful Spanish last name, Maria Paz de Casara. She says, I'm quite limited with right shoulder with 2 main tendons cut and no chance of surgery since they are too retracted. It is painful to do certain movements. What could I do to move arm under my condition? Well, firstly, we do have an upcoming video about shoulder pain, Maria. So definitely check that out in the coming weeks, because we do have a lot of good content coming out, don't we, mate?
Yeah, we do. We've got a few months worth of content coming out.
Oh, yeah.
More to come. So, yeah, Maria, it's a tricky one, of course, for us to answer here. But basically what you're looking for is any movement that involves your shoulder that you can tolerate. Because one thing we know is that,
I'll get some dumbbells,
is that it doesn't have to be a super specific shoulder exercise. Lots of different movements are going to cause the muscles around your shoulder to work. And then, as we said, adapt and get stronger and hopefully allow you to tolerate more. So,
Ollie, some of the modifications we might use if people are struggling to get their arm up overhead, and this is classic, one arm's going fine, the other arm's struggling a bit. One thing you can use a broomstick or just a really light weight is hold on to it with both hands, and the side that's not as affected can actually help pull up the other side. So that's an effective strategy for doing some front raises and things like that. But what would you say for, overhead presses? How can we modify that?
Yeah, well, if you're able to manage these, Maria, you might try leaning back in a chair.
Yeah, so we're pretending that there's a back to my chair here.
And what that allows you to do is press up over your head with a little bit more ease. That's obviously an important movement for things like reaching up into an overhead cupboard, putting clothes out on the line. So it's one that we do focus on. Not always tolerable.
No.
And if that's the case, you can still benefit from other exercises, whether it's that assisted front raise Jack showed you. Even things like a bicep curl is going to be useful for keeping the upper body strong and getting some element of challenge through your shoulders. But yeah, as we said, it's probably best to get more specific advice, in your case, Maria, from a local health practitioner, a physio perhaps, who can assess you and really dial it into your specific needs.
Okay, muchas gracias por la pregunta.
Yeah, make sure you keep an eye out for that upcoming video about shoulder exercises. Got another question here, Jack, from Candy.
Candy, one of our members.
One of our members. Good to see you, Candy. Candy asks, I would appreciate hip strengthening exercises, please, aside from the squats, both for osteoporosis and to improve my Zendo Kai kicks. Specifically, after I chamber my leg elevation is pretty pathetic. Front kicks are strong, just sideways kicks I'm having issues with. Now, Jack,
I'm pretty specific.
I know you're a bit of a Zendo Kai aficionado.
Absolutely not. I don't know what I'm doing. Zendo Kai, I think he is maybe in kind of offside of karate, maybe.
Right.
Similar, I'm guessing, punching, kicking. I do jiu-jitsu, which is more wrestling and choking and submitting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Pretty intense stuff. So we're going to use the best of our knowledge here to answer you, Candy. So as far as osteoporosis, we've sort of addressed that, but that osteoporosis video is going to be great, Candy.
Yeah. But yeah, so apart from squats, another great movement is a deadlift. Remember, deadlifts, picking the weight up from the ground, is going to load your hips up a lot, not just your back.
Yeah. And things like leg press, gym exercise like that are also good.
Yeah.
Beyond that, there's nothing really special or magical in terms of exercise for osteoporosis. Just load up those big movements. Then to help with that kicking movement, you are going to be...
a couple of ideas.
Jack's got a couple of ideas. To some extent, you are going to be limited by your makeup. For example, Jack and I both, we have quite deep hip sockets. We don't have great hip flexibility, which means, certainly for me, and I know for Jack, if
Go on, mate, show us a karate kick.
Kicking up to the side is going to be very challenging, not only because it's hard for me to get my leg up on this side, but also you can see I'm trying to hinge my body on this hip, and that's really tough for me as well. So to some extent, you are going to be limited by your makeup. Yeah.
Now, in terms of hip strength, you saw Ollie there doing some, I'm not sure if you can see this too well. Oh, I'll get in the middle here, Ollie.
Yep.
You saw Ollie doing some kicks out to the side like that. I would suggest that's a great way to start, Ollie, wouldn't you say?
Yep.
Doing some
hip abductions,
as you can see me doing here. And don't forget, and your coach will probably tell you this, just like in kickboxing, there's no reason you can't lean over when you do kicks and that type of thing, okay? Because you're dealing with your body and what range of motion restrictions it might have. But yeah, you're moving your body in the most efficient way possible to get that kick out. The difference between the front kicks you were talking about is you're only kicking out to the front. You're not usually can get someone's chest for that type of movement, whereas the side kicks, okay, that's going to be a lot harder for certain people's hip range of motion. So I recommend doing some side hip abductions, maybe even doing some pauses out here, coming back down. Oh, and Ollie, I tell you, mate, that's a good workout already. So I think that's a great one.
And I will say, for anyone who's just joined us,
we are not a martial arts.
No, we don't encourage any violence as well. Kicking especially can do quite a bit of damage.
Yeah, I mean, martial arts can also be protective from violence.
True. All right. Okay. So if you have just joined us and perhaps you're new to Be Mobile, make sure you subscribe to our channel. As we said, we've got a lot of great content coming up, all things exercise for over-55s.
Yeah, we'd also like to hear where you're watching from. So maybe chuck us a comment in the comments below just saying, hey, it's so-and-so from, and I'm hailing from Edinburgh, Scotland.
Yeah, let us know.
You could be hailing from Iceland. Who knows?
Who knows? We don't know. Let us know. Jenny's got a question. Jenny's wondering about the best and quickest way to improve cardiovascular fitness. When we talk about cardiovascular fitness, we're talking about the heart and the circulatory system and the ability to use oxygen for energy. I didn't experience any muscle soreness from my recent challenging, mostly uphill bushwalk, but I was huffing and puffing like crazy and taking frequent short breaks to catch my breath. The experienced bushwalker with me didn't have this problem at all. Sadly, I can't watch live. Well, you can tune into this one after the fact, Jenny, and we're going to answer your question now.
Yeah, great question, Jenny. What's the wondering about the best and quickest way to improve cardio fitness? I think the answer lies in the fact that you talked about an experienced bushwalker.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the reason the bushwalker you were with was able to tolerate the load of walking uphill without getting out of breath is probably because they are experienced and they've done a lot of volume bushwalking, so a lot of total hours and minutes of bushwalking. And that's why, elite athletes, they're so good at what they do and they look like they do it so effortlessly because they do it all the time. You think of a marathon runner.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no real quick fix here. What we're looking to do is find something that you can stay consistent with in the long term so you can accumulate lots of time spent at a level that you can tolerate, but it's challenging enough for you to improve your heart's ability to pump blood around your body, because that's what that experienced bushwalker with you is able to do better. Yeah,
and I would include, when you're thinking about increasing your total volume, I would include a mix of moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise like hiking, where you're not completely out of breath, you're able to maintain a conversation, but you're maybe huffing a little bit and it's labored breathing. And then some high intensity cardio like we have in our membership programs where we do a bit faster paced work where you're getting out of breath within, a couple of minutes.
Yeah. A couple of things to add here. We want to build up really slowly. So start with a level of walking that you're doing now, okay? And then add 10% each week. So you might walk a little further. You might go a little bit faster. But just try and stick with that 10% increase each week as a good rule of thumb. The other thing as well, make sure you're doing your strength training, okay? If you imagine walking up a set of stairs on a steep incline on your bushwalk, each one of those steps, you're lifting your body weight. This is a great demo. You're lifting your body weight on one leg. So the stronger you can get those legs, the easier each one of those steps will be. So that's going to help you to handle some of that more intense bushwalking.
Great. Okay, let us know how you go, Jenny. And we're also giving acting classes every second Wednesday, folks. Ollie will be leading that. We've got a question here from April Jane. She says, pinched nerve, exercise. So I'm guessing this is a question, do you have exercises for a pinched nerve? This is one that's really hard for us to answer with any sort of specificity. But we do have a great video up and coming about sciatica, which is I'm assuming what April is talking about there. So we won't go too much into that, Ollie.
No, we won't. But with regards to back pain, what we know is that any exercise that you can stick with is going to be good. There aren't any magic exercises per se, but you can experiment with different things.
Ones that are tolerable is very important.
Ones that are tolerable and hopefully enjoyable. We have a bias towards strength training because we think it helps you to build confidence in your back and help you to tolerate things like lifting up heavy loads a little bit better. So we always try to include that in an exercise program for someone with back pain. But yeah, any exercise you can stick to.
Yeah, but definitely keep your eyes out over the coming months because we have a great video about sciatica that we're going to be releasing.
Now, next question here from Christine. Christine says, I have shaky hands due to hypothyroidism. Any exercises would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, so the thing here, Christine, is obviously addressing the root cause of your shaky hands. Exercises aren't necessarily going to fix this issue. That's one to chat with your doctor. It might be medication, might be lifestyle changes. But just like anyone, you will benefit from exercise.
Absolutely.
So that's a combination of cardiovascular and strength training and some balance training as well. Yeah. Anything to add here, Jim?
No, mate.
No.
Question here from Lynette. She asks, what are the best exercises for bone-on-bone shoulder? Yeah, so this little bit to unpack here. This is often, you don't often hear people say bone-on-bone shoulder as much as you do for knee osteoarthritis and things like that. What we do know from the evidence and from radiographic findings, from X-ray, MRI, is that it's usually not actually bone on bone. There usually is some sort of cartilage left in those joints. However, regardless of what's happening in the joint, you're always going to try to find a starting point for you in your exercise, be it strength or cardiovascular training, that is tolerable for you. And that's kind of a big theme that you'll hear us talk about. So, for example, if you've got a really sore shoulder and you can tolerate lifting your hands overhead, that's cool. But then you hold 5 kilos when you're doing a strength workout and you go, oh, no, that's too much. You'd really pull it back to maybe a 1 kilo weight, like I've got here, Ollie. And if that's too much, maybe you'll do a 1 kilo weight between your two hands. If that's too much, you might even go to a broomstick to start to make sure that it's tolerable, and then you slowly progress from there.
Or even a different exercise altogether. But to be quite honest, Lynette, we don't really worry about X-ray findings or imaging findings with things like osteoarthritis, because a lot of research showing that even people with radiographic findings like bone-on-bone joints don't have any symptoms at all. Now, you might say, well, I've got symptoms, but I only raise that point to highlight to you that, well, you can improve your symptoms. And it's all about finding a level that you can start with. Don't be put off by doing an exercise and finding, oh, that's really painful. Let's experiment, find other ways that you can start to get moving. That's, as Jack said, a big theme of ours.
Yeah, so just to clarify with the scans you're talking about, some people, so if you take a big cohort of people and they have these studies, they'll take a lot of people who don't have any symptoms whatsoever, and a lot of them, majority of them, will have, what would you say, radiographic findings that are usually associated with shoulder osteoarthritis. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Next up here from Betty. Betty says, the Be Mobile team members showed us their lunch boxes a few days ago.
That was on a great YouTube short that we did.
The importance of protein was the topic. Could you talk about protein and the amount recommended for people of a certain height, age, and weight? We sure can, Betty. So as we often talk about, the recommended dietary intake for protein intake is really a bare minimum. If we're looking to improve muscle mass and strength in, especially people over 55, we know they have higher requirements for protein intake.
100%. And the reason that is because the older you get, the less you're able to synthesize protein, and females less than males as well. Okay, so young men like myself and Ollie in their 30s. 30s?
Not quite.
Not yet. I am. We tend to take protein in really easy and use it well in our body, but the older you get, the less that is the case. So getting in more protein is really, really important. Now, Ollie, you were talking about the bare minimums, which is generally spoken of as 0.8 grams of protein per kilo of body weight per day. So, for example, if you were 50 kilos, that would be, I think, 40 grams of protein per day, if I'm right.
Yep. Good
Yep.
maths.
But that is not enough,
No.
according to the evidence for people over 50.
So we're looking for simplicity's sake, 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of ideal body weight per day. So let's break that down. So if you were 70 kilos and you were nice and lean and you were healthy body weight, you would be looking at somewhere around 100 grams of protein per day.
But let's just say you were 80 kilos, but your ideal body weight was 70. What would you do then?
Yeah, so what I would do, I would go on Google, I'd type in ideal body weight calculator. I'd put in my gender, my height, and my body weight, and hopefully find an ideal body weight. And then you can use that to form the calculations. Because let's say you are quite overweight. Let's say you're 30 kilos overweight. Obviously, if you times your body weight by 1.5, you're going to have a very high protein intake amount, and that's going to be very unattainable. Well, it's oftentimes unattainable. So use your ideal body weight to work out how much protein you should be having per day. And Jack, there's lots of different sources of protein that people can use. We've had a couple of questions about good ways to good sources of protein. Yeah, good ways to increase your protein.
Yeah, and like most people will know that meats, eggs, nuts contain protein, okay? But then there's vegetarian sources, cheeses. You can get lots of high protein yogurts at the shop these days, which is really good. Things like tofu, all of your legumes, lentils, beans, chickpeas. There's lots of things that have protein. Even a lot of grains will have traces of protein. And when you combine that together in a meal, let's just say you had, chicken, brown rice, and chickpeas, you've got 3 sources of protein there that you're bringing together. But I think adding small amounts of proteins probably one of the best ways to do it, rather than thinking, let's just say you measured and you're like, currently I'm eating 0.8 grams per kilo body weight per day. I'm just going to suddenly increase it to 1.5 per day. You might not feel great if you double your chicken intake.
So we want to leave you with a couple of key tips. The first thing is just be mindful with each meal. Where can you add in a little bit of extra protein? Right. So does it mean adding a yogurt to your lunch? Does it mean adding an extra egg or some beans to your breakfast?
Beans.
Those sorts of things. And the other thing, we know from some of the research that breakfast tends to be the lowest protein source in terms of meals for the day. So hyper focus on that. Maybe instead of having cereal, maybe you're adding in a little protein shake, or you're adding some yogurt,
nuts,
making sure you're starting the day on the front foot in terms of your protein intake.
Yeah. Now, speaking of protein shakes, Jeanette asks, you've talked about increasing the amount of protein in our daily diet. Do you recommend protein powders? I can't seem to get enough protein into my regular diet for my 67 kilo 100 grams per protein per day, which is rightly said, and have heard that protein can help repair muscle after a workout. So we'll take that first, and we've got another question from you.
Sure.
So what would you say about that? Do we recommend protein powders?
Well, ideally, you're getting the vast majority of your protein sources from whole foods, as we've already talked about. But in the case where that's just not possible, it is important for your long-term health to be strong and have lots of muscle mass. So we recommend protein powders. They're a good way of adding some extra protein into your diet.
Yeah, and if you're worried about the quality of the protein intake, you can have a look at your national food bodies and see what they recommend, or speak to your doctor or anything like that. Now, what I would say is you'd probably be surprised how much protein you're actually getting in through your diet. For example, if you had a protein shake, generally that's going to be 20 to 30 grams of protein. If you had a 100-gram steak or chicken, that's another 25 grams. So
you've already very small.
Which would be very. So let's just say you had a 200-gram. That's 50. So you've already got 75 grams there in just 2 things, and then you add some yogurt with some almonds and perhaps something else, and you kind of got 100 already. Through that, and a couple of extra eggs during the day or something like that. You'd be surprised how easy it is to make up that 100.
And then Jeanette's got a follow-up question. I still feel some pain in my joints after my workouts, even though I've been exercising with Be Mobile for some time now. Will increasing my protein help with that? So probably not going to be a big needle mover in terms of the pain in your joints after workouts. That's really more of a tolerance thing. So you've been exercising with Be Mobile for some time, still getting some pain in the joints. I want to highlight that to some extent, to a very large extent, pain is a normal part of life. And to think that you can mitigate it entirely is not realistic for most people.
No. And if you're consistently sore and it's, stopping you from doing things in your daily life, you're probably going too hard in the workouts. So pulling back from that is a good idea. But, some amount of joint pain, like, I did some bench press today with some tricep work, and my elbow joints are, feeling it a little bit. But I'd expect that because I just work them a lot. Just like we'd expect our muscles to get sore. But, if your joints are constantly sore, and in both sides, that might be something you want to check up with your doctor as well. If it's if you think it's something
you're concerned about. Yeah. All right. Well, we had one other question here in the comments from Claire. Claire asks, any advice about fixing?
Bring it up on the screen there, Ollie.
Badly damaged glutes and hamstrings by sliding along a wet floor during a pickleball game. We love pickleball. Can we just say? Have used the RICE response, which is, of course, rest, ice, compression, elevation. But now I need to get them working again. They are very sore. Yep, I think that's the right approach, Claire. Get a bit of loading and movement through the glutes and the hamstrings. It'd just be about finding a tolerable level. So I think a great idea would be to start with something like a glute bridge.
Or a squat. Or a lunge.
Light deadlifts, these sorts of things. But it's just going to be a matter of what you can handle to start with.
And in saying that, Claire, if you've slipped over and you still have a lot of pain, in the weeks coming, well, then go see your local physio. I think they're much better able to assess you. But as you said, Ollie, generally speaking, you're on the right track if you're thinking about getting back into things at a tolerable level.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Great to see you all here. And for those of you who've dropped us a comment or a little like, or perhaps you've subscribed to our YouTube channel already. Imagine.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Imagine that. Well, you're going to keep getting these awesome videos because we will definitely be back next week, which we are super pumped to do. And really appreciating the engagement. We've got quite a few people on live watching at the moment, and we love having you here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. That sun's getting on us. I think we should probably...
It's very warm. So we are going to sign out, and we'll see you next week.